Good Thursday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock, time for Sports for CLE. Hope you're having a great day. Plenty of Browns to talk about. A little later in the show, Sam Monson from Pro Football Focus will join us. We'll talk plenty of Browns, and that is where we begin. Earlier this morning, Deshaun Watson and most of the offense, at least the guys that had their passports, boarded a plane and headed to the Bahamas. This is from Alex Taylor's Instagram, one of the Browns' offensive linemen. Deshaun Watson flying the offense out to the Bahamas for a couple of days. They will work out and bond. With that, let's welcome in Quincy Carrier. Quincy, you got to choose between Austin, Texas, Camp Mayfield, or the Bahamas. I'm going with the Bahamas. I don't know about you.
Oh, it's an extraordinary flex by Deshaun Watson to be able to just say, let's keep in mind, we don't. This came out at the beginning of the week, so presumptuously he said like over the weekend or on Monday, hey, by the way, this weekend y'all want to go to the Bahamas? I'll pay for everything. And who is in the position to do something like that other than Deshaun Watson? Like maybe Miles can do that, but Deshaun that's when you have your contract guaranteed. You have that kind of security that you could do such a thing, which is 30 guys to the Bahamas on his dollar. I would assume that Jimmy and D had something to do with the private plane, but I don't know what the NFL rules are when it comes to the offseason stuff, right? Because they are going to work out there, so they might not be able to even help there. So it's like, wow. And what a way to ingratiate yourself with the whole offense, right? Everybody, like, imagine you're David Bell. You went from preparing at Purdue and, like, maybe your quarterback gets you, like, a swipe on his meal card, and that's a nice show gesture, to, hey, you want to go to Bahamas? Do I even have a passport? Right? Like that is a world of difference there. And not to like slight Baker Mayfield wasn't at the point of his career to where one, he could afford such a thing, and two, he could command such a thing, right? Because Deshaun Watson has that level of respect as far as his football play is concerned, that people would be willing to do something like go to the Bahamas for a weekend to practice football and get together, because they know that with him at the helm, the expectations are going to be lofty and the goals and the success could be high. But that's impressive. That's an impressive use of the wallet right there. And from the stories you've heard about Deshaun Watson in Houston, about how he treats guys in the locker room, I think we're going to hear a lot more of stuff like this as the time goes out, right? Remember that first video they released? He was like walking into the stage, the Berea. He had like 5 bags of CVS. I'm like, what is he doing? He probably was like giving out stuff. I don't know. But yeah, that's how he rolls when it comes to his teammates. Yeah,
that will go a long way with bonding. All right, there was a bunch of stuff that Josina Anderson tweeted out, and among them that, the league would certainly look at what Major League Baseball did with Trevor Bauer as far as the suspension goes. And the way it was put, it kind of makes sense. I am starting to get the sense that this suspension will probably be a little longer than the 4 to 6 games I thought it was. Talk me off the ledge here, Quincy. Give me, or do you think it could potentially be a little bit longer based on what you've seen lately?
I think we're still kind of in the early parts of this. Here's what I would say. If it comes out now, like if the NFL rules or makes it sound like they're going to make a ruling now, that's not good news if you're the Cleveland Browns, because that means it's probably a longer term suspension that they want people to talk about so they can make an example, right? If it's not that, like let's say we get through this quiet portion, we get through the preseason and we haven't heard anything, then it's probably going to be, a portion of the season. I don't think it gets any longer than a season. And again, this could be something where the NFL, how much of a hassle do they want this to be, right? Because suspending a player is one thing, right? But then they can challenge that ruling, challenge, if anything, if this is an unlawful stoppage of work by their employer, and then you can challenge those things in actual court. Tom Brady has done this multiple times and won. So, this is, if the NFL chooses to go to year-long process, they know that this is going to be a long process, right? This is Usually the NFL does not make an example out of players who have significant resources at their side for this reason. So I would be surprised if the NFL decided to make an example out of Deshaun Watson purely because Deshaun Watson has enough capital to defend himself. And that's not something that the league usually, does, right? Usually they make an example out of Vontaze Burfict or a player that's been in that mid-range where people know him, but, he doesn't really have enough money to really challenge us all the way. When they do try to make an example out of somebody who does, like Tom Brady, it usually doesn't end their way. So we'll see what happens here. It could be anything. Again, I would caution Browns fans to say, hold off on all of this, worry until August, right? Because we're not going to hear anything. We're not going to get much more news than what we've gotten. And what we've gotten hasn't really been news. It's been, hey, he's interviewed, and his suspension could be a year. It could be 3 games or nothing. That's the same conversation we've been having since we traded for Deshaun Watson. So I don't think anything really is new there. It's a topic of conversation again. Right. And that's the only reason it's coming up again.
Yep, that's fair enough. All right. So here's Keyshawn Johnson from ESPN's NFL Live on what the Browns should do with Baker Mayfield.
No, they have a quarterback in Jacoby Brissett, a guy who's won this league, a guy that the Indianapolis Colts several years ago believed in as their starting quarterback when they acquired him from the New England Patriots. Phil, I have no reason to believe that Baker Mayfield can walk into that locker room and the players will rally around Baker Mayfield. Plus, in this situation with Deshaun Watson, if in fact he is suspended, we don't really know what the situation is. We all assume. I believe Jacoby Brissett can hold things together until Deshaun comes back. Who's to say that Baker Mayfield is a better quarterback than Jacoby Brissett in the right circumstances? We will see for sure.
All right, you see some of the numbers there. Let's take a look at Brissett's numbers career-wise. This is Pro Football Focus. So the one-loss percentage is a little misleading. I mean, he's 14-23. That 4-11 season was when he took over for Andrew Luck. So he's running a completely different type of offense. 7-8 more realistic. 2-3 filling in for Tua. So I know you've addressed this on your show, Quincy. Can the Browns win if Jacoby Brissett has to be their quarterback for 6, 7, 8 games?
I think so, and I think they will make an improvement over last year, even if that's the case, just because the issue with the offense last year was not that they did not have enough talent to succeed, right? They had Nick Chubb. They had Kareem Hunt. They had a great offensive line. They had 2 all-pro wide receivers. That wasn't the issue. The issue was the Browns could not depend on what was coming out of the quarterback position, right? Like it would either be one thing or the other when it came to Baker Mayfield. And that's hard to coach around, right? When you put a game plan together and you don't know what you're going to get out the quarterback position, good or bad, that is worse than having somebody who is consistently mediocre. And no offense to Jacoby Brissett has been consistently around that level, right? Where he's not been like a great quarterback, not necessarily a long-term starter, but somebody who could be fine if they're in there. The thing that makes the team better when that guy is in there is that you know that that's the deal with the quarterback. So you're not going to think you could throw the ball 20 times. You're not going to think that you can get into these situations. Everybody else knows this. So that's why when you saw the Browns play with Case Keenum and I forget the third stringer's name, but the third stringer against Las Vegas, that's why you saw that the play calling was better. That's why you saw the offense move just a little bit better. That's why you saw that the things were just a little bit smoother there because there wasn't that friction. They knew exactly what they had at quarterback, which wasn't much, so they relied on the other things. When Baker Mayfield was in there, you kind of had to call the game as if he was a dude who could carry you on offense, and he wasn't that guy all the time, and that causes more problems than it's not, right? It's like having Russell Westbrook on your roster if you're a basketball team, right? Russell Westbrook is better than like most dudes in the NBA, but sometimes you would rather just have a Buddy Hield because you know what you could do with Buddy Hield. You know what you could play him at. With Russell Westbrook, you got to play him like he's Russ. He ain't Russ all the time. And that's what gets you in trouble. That's what Baker Mayfield, right? It's not that he can't play at a high level occasionally. He absolutely can. Is that he also is just as capable as playing at a low level. And when you can't rely on what level you're going to get out of a player, then he might as well be off, right? Because you can't do anything with that. And that is why I think the offense looked so horrendous last year, because that kept on bouncing up and down, and the quarterback position, more than any other position in football, needs to have consistency in order to thrive.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll kind of flip sides of the ball. We'll start talking a little bit of defense. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier. Time to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This is about the Browns defense and especially that defensive line.
Hello, Thad from Youngstown. I'm calling about my biggest concern right now for the Browns. Miles needs a sidekick, and that sidekick is Jadeveon Clowney. I'm a little concerned because he's still not signed. We have Miles with no sidekick, and we have to worry about our D-line, which, Jordan Elliott I'm worried about, and Tommy Togiai, who we drafted last year, I'm worried about. But I like the pick of Perrion Winfrey, and I like the pick of Alex Wright, and I like the pick of, Isaiah Thomas. I like those, but they all seem to be developmental players for next year to me. And Chase Winovich could be, our Tack McKinley of this year. But we still need that sidekick for Miles, which I do believe is Jadeveon Clowney. Because one thing about Clowney I do like, he's very, very good against the run, and he doesn't get sealed. Your thoughts? Thanks for taking my call. Love the show. Bye.
As always, we appreciate all the voicemails. What about Quincy? Reason to be concerned about that?
I mean, with Clowney, we do this every year. We've been doing this for 4 years where we're like, oh, what's Clowney going to do? And he always signs late. So, I think that he's just doing what he normally does, which is taking his time on this one to make sure that he gets maximum value, which is good on him. And two, just to make sure that he's in the proper shape and handling his body how he wants to. So I think they'll probably bring back Clowney in the event that they don't. Yeah, they do have a problem, right? Because I don't think Chase Winovich is a starting level player. I know the hype's been out about him where people are like, hey, he could start. I don't think that's a proper starter next to Myles Garrett. Maybe on another team that does not have Myles Garrett. But when you have Myles Garrett, you can't play with that other side. So I would have a Jadeveon Clowney there. But if you just make that signing, right, Jadeveon Clowney, you're all right there. You have Myles. You can rotate in and out Chase Winovich. We've forgotten the Browns traded for Taven Bryant, right? He's probably going to get some playing time here. So Taven Bryant's probably going to be on that other side. Maybe they sign a veteran like Ndamukong Suh, but I think more likely it's just going to be Taven Bryant there and maybe one of the other younger guys, right? Tommy Togiai, Jordan Elliott, whoever wins that battle. And then Perrion Winfrey probably on the other side. If not, somebody else beats him with Sheldon Day rotate. I think you're fine there. on the defensive line, as long as you make that one sign, right? If you don't, okay, yeah, you got a problem. But with Clowney, I tend to not panic about these things until he signs with another team, because he just takes forever, right, to do this whole free agency process. He's done this, he has signed in April or later, in late April or later, the last, 4 years of his career. You know, it's just kind of how he handles these things.
Yeah, and to your point, that kind of puts everybody and slots everybody in the right spot. This one's kind of interesting. This is from Jamison Hensley. It's the projections to win the AFC North, and it's based on ESPN's Football Power Index. They have the Browns as the favorite to win the AFC North based on the Football Power Index. And you see, not a lot of respect for the Bengals, the team that went to the Super Bowl, the AFC champs, and the Steelers kind of fallen off behind with their change at quarterback. Should the Browns be the favorites, do you think?
If you think that Watson will play a full season, yeah. If you don't know where Watson's going to play, then I have no idea how you determine that kind of a thing, right? That's what makes it difficult. A lot of this hinges on the quarterback position. And as much as I think the Browns could get by with Jacoby Brissett for a year, I also think there is a world of difference between having Jacoby Brissett and having Deshaun Watson at quarterback, right? So that whole thing changes everything for the Cleveland Browns, but roster-wise, yeah, they're the best roster. I would agree that probably roster-wise, the Ravens are the second best roster. I understand that the Bengals have done a lot in this offseason. They're a strong team, and being the third best team in this division is not really a slight. They're all great teams here at the top of this. Even Pittsburgh's a pretty good team for a team that people are projecting largely to be last place. So I don't think any of this is a slight to the Bengals, but, the Bengals, when you look at their season, yes, they had tremendous success. Yes, they achieved a lot of stuff last year, but also you have to look, they had a very fortunate playoff route, right, where they only really had to play one elite level quarterback in that entire run up until they had the Chiefs and the Rams. And if you consider Matt Stafford elite, that's kind of a borderline case there, but they played Derek Carr and Ryan Tannehill, both who had horrible games. Multiple turnovers, right? So they were fortunate in those games, still only won them by a small point differential. And they kind of squeaked by in the regular season, won the division because the division was especially weak, right? We had an injured Baker Mayfield playing at an awful level, no Lamar Jackson at the end of the season, and then Ben Roethlisberger was, old Ben Roethlisberger at that point. The Ravens were tremendously injured, and you can see how the gates kind of opened for the Bengals in a way that it probably won't open for them again to win the division. Not saying that they're not capable of doing it, they are, but they're still going to have to make a tremendous leap, as crazy as it sounds, as a team in order to have that regular season success that they had last year and replicate it. Now in the playoffs, anything goes, but as far as regular season goes, they're still going to have to make a leap if everything stays on a relatively healthy plan for all the other teams.
Yeah, and they had the first place schedule to deal with as well. This is another interesting chart. So this is a percentage of how often wide receivers create big plays, and it's defined by being 15, 20 yards or more. Number one in the NFL percentage-wise, Donovan Peoples-Jones. You see, looks 58, big plays 12, so it's 20.7%. And then the guy that the Browns went out and traded for, Amari Cooper, significantly more looks, 104, 15 big plays, and that was 14.4%. That put him in at 31st. So again, the Browns do have guys that can make big plays. The quarterback play needs to improve. That's what that tells you.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. At the beginning of the season, I felt like the Donovan Peoples-Jones was playing very well. It's just he wasn't getting the targets that he probably should have gotten. And when he got those targets, the ball was a little off or it was a little high. And look, we want the wide receivers to be great overcomers and make all the plays that the quarterback can't. But at some point, that's going to affect their efficiency, right? So I think that kind of happened with Donovan Peoples-Jones. That kind of affects his confidence. The reason why Deshaun Watson being in there makes a difference is because the ball's going to be exactly where he wants it to be every time he throws the ball. And that's not only going to be good for just being able to make plays, but it's going to be good for these wide receivers' confidence. And that confidence goes a long way throughout the season as far as success goes.
And speaking of Donovan Peoples-Jones, this is on Instagram. He's messaging OBJ, so Odell, miss you, dog. And again, we kind of talked a little bit about this during the season. It seems, Quincy, like when Odell left, I don't want to say there was a divide, but the locker room wasn't as united as you would have liked to have seen it, I think. Fair?
Well, I would put it like this, right? And I try to relate these things to what everybody else can relate it to. We've all been in a work situation where there's been that one dude that comes to work that everybody kind of likes, right? For the most part, everybody kind of likes, right? Management might not like him, but everybody that works the floor likes that dude, right? And when they fire that dude, you start looking at people sideways, right? That's what happened. They fired Odell. You came to work. Where's the fun guy? Where's the dude? Like, no, he's not there. And then now we looking at Baker Mayfield like, well, what did you say? You know what I mean? Did you say something? Did you get him off this team? And Baker's like, no, I didn't. It's that situation. Like, we've all been in this situation. We all know what this does to the workplace. And that's kind of what happened. I mean, the locker room had its issues beforehand, and they were going to have issues regardless of if they cut Odell or not, because let's not forget this offense was sorry, right? With Odell, without Odell, this offense was mediocre last year. And when you have a defense playing at a high level, when the expectations are high, and one of the parts of the team is just outright mediocre, I mean, painful to watch, yeah, people are not going to be happy in that locker room. I think we would be upset if they were happy, right? What if they were kumbaya out here, scored 10 points on the Detroit Lions? We would want somebody fired at that point. So, yeah, I would say, of course, when they cut Odell, I think that was the point that people can point to, right? But I think that damage was happening far before it, because some of these games were like, yo, what's going on? Why are we this terrible on the offensive side of the ball? And football players watch the games more than we do, right? Just as much as we do. And if we out here watching the games like, man, this offense stinks, like, what is going on? They recognize it too. And imagine how frustrating it should be when that, for us, it's just, hey, man, our team can't win because of this. For them, it's, I can't do my job because they out here being sorry. And when that's the case, people are going to be mad, man. Like, that is what it is. I don't know how they handled it internally, individually, right? Like, I can't speak to that, but I know the basic premise of what happened last year on the offensive side of the ball is a recipe for people to be mad, because we would all be mad. If we were trying to do this show and we had sound in and out, we're going to be mad because now we can't do our job, right? Like, that's just how it is. When somebody gets in the way of you trying to do your job, you're going to be mad. That's what the offense was. It was, well, not the offense. This is what the defense was. That's what people in the offense was. It was mad because they couldn't get things they wanted to get done. Expectations are incredibly high, and it was mad, right? And I think that's perfectly natural and fine in that situation. I don't think that tore the team apart. What tore the team apart was the team being mediocre on offense. Whatever caused that is what tore this team apart. Like, I don't think the bad locker room stuff caused the team to be mediocre on the offensive side of the ball. I think the mediocrity on the offensive side of the ball absolutely caused all those the dominoes to fall, and it will cause all the dominoes to fall in any other locker room, because that's just how the NFL works. That's how any workplace works.
That's fair enough. Well stated, Quincy Carrier. We're going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, Ron Byer, our voicemailer extraordinaire, with an interesting question. We'll also look at ranking the 2022 offenses. Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
Thanks for buying a fishing license. I want you to picture all of the great things this simple purchase does. Like building public boat ramps, keeping local waters clean, and maintaining a healthy fish population.
What's Mom doing?
When you buy a fishing license, you do a lot. Every dollar protects and maintains your local waterways for future generations to enjoy. Visit takemefishing.org.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Deshaun Watson suspension.
Hi, Dave. I would like to make a comment on the Deshaun Watson situation. Every action made by someone has a reaction to it. The bigger the popularity of someone has a larger reaction, both positive and negative. But our country is based on a legal system that, after going through the process, decides if someone is guilty or innocent on that action. So in the case of Deshaun Watson, it is not up to the NFL at this point to be judge, jury, and executioner, so they can somewhat protect their image, which is a far cry from being a perfect model. The legal system must do their process first. Then and only then should the NFL come in and place a penalty. Anything other than that discredits the integrity of the NFL or player.
All right, Ron, as always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Quincy, the thing that I would say to that is the NFL is going to eventually suspend Deshaun Watson based on the code of conduct. So the statement is we hold our players to a higher standard. So it isn't anything legal. It's basically, did you do what you should do as an NFL player? And in that instance, at the end of the day, Roger Goodell is judge, jury, and executioner, because as the commissioner, he has the final say in that.
And it's let's be honest here too. Also, another part of this is a public relation problem for the NFL, right?
Yep.
Like, they need to handle this from a public relations standpoint as well. It's not a good look for the NFL to have somebody out there with that amount of accusations against him that are unresolved at this point, right? And for them to just wipe their hands up and go, "Hey, man, we couldn't do anything," right? Like, they aren't limited from the apparatus of the law, right? Where the law has to prove something until beyond a reasonable doubt. The NFL is not limited to that. They can make the judgment if they feel like he did it or feel like he broke the code of conduct. They will make a determination on that. So I know people make the argument that he didn't get any legal consequences, but when this whole thing broke, we were not talking about the legal consequences of what Deshaun Watson was doing. We kind of understood at the beginning of this story that it would be very hard to prove these things in a court of law. It wasn't about that. This was more about the court of public opinion, and this is where he is being tried at. So all of the legal stuff was irrelevant, I think, in this whole conversation at the start. It's irrelevant right now, and it's more about the court of public opinion, because that's the court that the NFL is going to be trafficking in and being judged by. So, I know people put that out there a lot, but that's just what I would say to that.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. That it is a public relations thing for the NFL. All right, let's move on. CBSSports.com ranked the 2022 offenses in tiers. Tier 1 was the Buccaneers, Rams, Chiefs, Chargers, Packers. Tier 2, Browns at 10th, and the Bills, Cowboys, Bengals, Eagles, all in that group. Position groups are graded on a scale of 1 to 5. PC is for play caller. So the running back obviously weighted very highly, and you see the quarterback at 4 is assuming you're going to have Deshaun Watson there as well. And again, that's probably pretty fair. They're in the upper third of the league, trending towards even higher if they can get everything on the right track.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, again, the Browns have a lot to prove again, right? Because we've gone through this cycle of, hey, man, the Browns are going to break expectations, or they got these expectations to live up to them. And we've let like anybody who's ranked this highly in the past down so many times on that the Browns now have the burden of proof, right? They have to prove it to people before people go and run away with any hype for the Cleveland Browns. So I get it. I get why the rankings are where they are. And I would, if I were thinking of this outside of a Cleveland perspective, I would definitely be putting the Browns about right there.
Yeah. It makes sense. It really does. All right. So Jeremy Fowler from ESPN reporting that the Browns' long-term contract offer to David Njoku values more than $13 million a year. And again, you see the receiving yards over 5 seasons. So Njoku hasn't really done it on a consistent basis. He mentions appears for a breakout. This year he's going to make just under 11. I think it's $10.9 million a year. Let me ask you this. Njoku, to me, seems like he should be a matchup problem. He's strong, he's fast, he's quick. The Browns haven't found a way to maximize that. Is that because the Browns haven't found a way to maximize it, or is it because Njoku hasn't been reliable enough for the Browns to maximize him being a matchup problem?
I would say this. If the Browns are talking about extending him before this season, that tells me that they think that he's going to have a breakout year this year, and getting him at this price right now, which is a pretty expensive price. I mean, that's Austin Hooper money, would be cheaper than what it would be at the end of the year, which tells me that they felt like he made that leap last season, but didn't have the numbers for reasons, right? Whatever those reasons are, we can talk about that later, but they felt like he didn't have the production because of reasons. I'm not trying to say this is an indictment on somebody, but I'm just saying that would be reasons, right? If you're like, hey, man, we need to re-sign David Njoku. He did not have great production last year. And why do you want to do that? We have confidence that with a better quarterback, he's going to be much more productive. So much confidence that we're going to put $13 million on it a year. That would tell me a lot about what they've seen internally with David Njoku. And what we have seen is a guy who has been more consistent. His catch rate was the best of all the tight ends last year. I mean, he doesn't do the same David Njoku stuff that used to drive you crazy about him his first 2 years in the league, right? Where he would drop the ball, or he would make a spectacular catch and then drop like an easy screen or something like that. That tells me that they feel like internally in the building that he has done the things he has needed to do to be consistent. And they are more than confident that with what they have in this quarterback room, that he will have that outbreak of a season. Will he have a breakout season that's going to be make him more than worth that $13 million?
Quincy Carrier and I are going to take a quick time out on the other side of the break. We head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about Baker Mayfield. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier. Time to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about Baker Mayfield.
How you doing, gang? It's your guy, E.T. I'm back. I got a two-part question. The first question, I was debating this with a coworker, see what you guys think. My coworker believes that even though everything didn't work out with Baker Mayfield, just because he was a part of the era that helped change the Browns, they believe that regardless of how his career ends, he should be added to the Browns Ring of Honor just because he was part of, what helped transform the Browns to what we going to become. I don't think so personally, just because there's just wasn't a lot that happened, but I don't know. Maybe you guys might disagree with me.
Yeah, Quincy, I don't see that. You realize the Ring of Honor is kind of limited to the amount of space that goes around the stadium.
It is also usually people who've made the Pro Bowl. You know what I mean? Like there's a level of individual excellence that you have to reach in order to be considered a Ring of Honor member, right? Like we go through the list, Josh Cribbs, one of the best punt and kick return special teamers of his era. The Joe Hayden, he's a Ring of Honor guy, right? You know what I mean? Great guy, one of the best corners. Shut down AJ Green to like no stats 2 times in his best season. Was always a perennial Pro Bowler for this team. Look, man, I understand that there are some people who want this to be good. We'll have a nice bow on it so we can appreciate and love on Baker, because y'all have given Baker all the credit for a turnaround that had a lot to do with everything else around him, plus him, right? And look, there's no team that's accomplished anything, right? I would hope, Dave, that we're not going to celebrate the 2020 Browns. I would hope we have achieved more than win a playoff game in the next 20 years. That we're not going to like bring back the 2020 Browns. You know what I mean? No. So look, ultimately, Baker could have a comeback in this city like Tim Couch, right? Tim Couch just came back to this city. You know, he's in the media. He does some of the preseason games sometimes. And people go, hey, Tim Couch, like Tim Couch. There it is. We don't got to put Tim Couch in the Ring of Honor, though, right? You know what I mean? Like, we could just appreciate Tim Couch. And that's what I'm saying to the Baker Mayfield fans. He don't got to be in no Ring of Honor. We don't got to put this man in our personal Hall of Fame. You can just appreciate him, and that's all you got to do. I don't know why in today's day we feel the need to go all the way with every person that we like, but hey, man, you can just appreciate him and let it be. We ain't got to do this extra. Baker Mayfield is not a Ring of Honor quality player. Like, he's not even close. Like, I would balk at that. I think that would be disrespectful to the other people who are in the Ring of Honor who have achieved Ring of Honor level traits. You know, and even then, like, if you're not talking about an all-star, like Bruce Bowen is in the Spurs Ring of Honor, but he's never been an all-star or whatever. But you have to think about it like this. They won a championship because of the road that Bruce Bowen was on there. So if Baker was a part of a championship team, put him in the Ring of Honor for the Cleveland Browns. But winning a wild card game, hey, man, you could just appreciate that man on your own time. We ain't got to put him in the Ring of Honor. I don't think that's disrespectful to him. I feel like if he thinks that he's a Ring of Honor member himself, that is wild to me. Wild to me.
I cannot argue anything that you have said there. All right, so Joe Burrow was asked about the whole Baker Mayfield situation. This is from the Full Send podcast. Take a listen to what Joe Burrow says.
I got to ask you, like, what are your thoughts on the Baker situation?
That's a tough situation. You know, he was hurt all last year. And, I mean, every time we play him, he balls.
Yeah.
First time we played him, Thursday night, week 2 of my rookie year, that was, we lost like 30 to 34 or something. He balled. And then the next time we play him, I throw for 400 yards, and he goes like 25 or 28 with 5 touchdowns. Goes on a 2-minute drive, touchdown, won the game. I haven't beat the Browns yet. He beat us both times this year. I guess I didn't play the second game because we had it all locked up, but in the first one he balled.
Why do you think his situation's so like up in the air?
You know, I think when you have a guy like Deshaun, you know, you got to take a chance at that because he's such a great player. But Baker will land on his feet. He's a really good player.
It's kind of interesting, Quincy. The other thing is, I don't think the Browns thought they were going to get Deshaun Watson. Just hearing him say that, I think they were surprised when they got the call back and he said, yeah, we're coming. You're going to guarantee it all? We're coming. I think the Browns were surprised by that.
I mean, when you win the lottery, like, you don't expect to win the lottery. You're always kind of a little bit surprised. You got to change some plans. You don't plan for winning the lottery or nothing like that. And that's essentially what the Browns did, right? There was a grouping of teams. Like, it wasn't a great chance that they were able to get this done. That's why they told Baker, hey, if we can't get that done, then we'll just rock with you. And that's kind of how this thing ended up there. But I would like to point out, Joe Burrow has not been humble about the Ravens, right? His dominance over the Ravens, he has been pretty loud about. But you saw how he was like, hey, I haven't beat Cleveland yet. He was a lot quieter and more respectful about it. But also, this Joe Burrow just being a real fun guy on that interview and all that. Just giving Bengal fans something to think about, because they have never, with they king, beaten the Cleveland Browns, even though he's beaten everybody else in this division. But yeah, the whole Baker Mayfield situation, it's just, it's an awkward one. It's one that people didn't expect, and it just wasn't handled the best, right? I mean, like, Joe Burrow's podcast clips are fun. Baker Mayfield's podcast clips were, up and down from a Cleveland Browns perspective, at least if you're in that building, or from an NFL executive perspective. So it's a rough situation. Hopefully it gets resolved soon, because I think everybody, in the building, out the building, that's covered the team, not covered the team, is ready for this to hit its next step.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, before we let you go, Pro Football Network predicted the playoff teams, and especially from the AFC we're going to look at. So they have the Browns as the 7th seed. They have the Bills as the 1st seed, Chargers 2, Ravens 3, Chiefs 4, Colts 4 rather, Chiefs 5, Bengals 6, and the Browns 7. And you see, Cleveland should be able to get by with Jacoby Brissett, Amari Cooper, David Bell boosting the receiving core if Deshaun Watson is suspended for part of that. Thoughts on that? Is that legit?
Like the 7th seed for the Browns?
Yeah.
I would say, look, this is going to be hard to make the playoffs, right? Like you could not make the playoffs and have a pretty good win-loss record. It is hard out here in the AFC. There are more elite quarterbacks than there are playoff spots in this conference. Like, it is what it is. So, if the Browns want to get that 7th seed, like, I think they're going to have to grind really hard to get it. Like, 11 wins might be what can get you that 7th seed this year, or maybe it gets you a 6 like it did in 2020. But think about that. The Browns went 11-5 in 2020 and had the 6th seed, and the AFC has only gotten like 3 times better. So it's going to be tough.
Yeah, there are a lot of good quarterbacks. Quincy Carrier, as always, man, appreciate the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much. Thanks, Quincy.
Thank you.
All right, Quincy Carrier, make sure you search him, has his own podcast. It's a good one. We check into that regularly. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, Sam Monson from Pro Football Focus. We will talk some defensive edge rusher rankings. Sports4CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
we continue talking Browns, let's take a look. 2022 edge rusher rankings. This is from Pro Football Focus. Tier 1 Defensive Player of the Year candidates. Number 1, TJ Watt. You got Myles Garrett, Khalil Mack, Micah Parsons. Tier 6 need to live up to expectations and potential. In the middle of that is Jadeveon Clowney, and the thought is that he will be back with the Browns. Let's welcome in Sam Monson from Pro Football Focus, who did those. And Sam, appreciate the time. Thanks very much. So take us through, Myles Garrett. Let's start there. Legitimate Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He's been close and then has kind of faltered last couple of years.
Yeah, I think he's absolutely a legit candidate for that. I don't think you can split really Myles Garrett and TJ Watt in terms of how good those two guys are at the edge rusher position. They're both amazing. They're both phenomenal pass rushers. I think TJ Watt maybe has done it a little bit more consistently for a little bit longer. Myles Garrett, it feels like we've been waiting for this 1 year where Garrett puts it all together and gives you 16, 17 games now of just this elite, unstoppable play. But between, the suspension for the Mason Rudolph thing, between catching COVID, it just seems that we never quite get that whole season where he's just dominant from start to finish. But those two guys should be right up there in any Defensive Player of the Year conversation. I would imagine, once again, they're going to be getting a ton of sacks, a ton of pressures, and be amongst, two of the top 3, 4, 5 best graded players at PFF.
And then let's talk a little bit about Jadeveon Clowney. That's kind of the tier 6, need to live up to potential. You had it. That's a guy that, he's such a freak of nature athletically and had such big hopes. In watching him regularly last year, he's really good against the edge and doing some of the things that don't necessarily show up statistically all the time.
Yeah, he's a really powerful, dominant athlete at times. The problem with Jadeveon Clowney is always been inconsistency. And, maybe he doesn't have the great bend and dip and burst around the edge that some other edge rushers have, but he's got more than enough physical tools to be a really dominant playmaker. And the fact that he hasn't had this big money contract that he's been looking for, really shows that inconsistency. His grades have been heading in the wrong direction since he left Houston, and keeps betting on himself in these sort of 1-year contracts, trying to have that big year that'll get him the giant deal, and it just doesn't come. And really, there's no reason that it shouldn't. We saw for a stretch last year that he was this fantastic complement to Myles Garrett, and a guy that really made that Cleveland defensive line formidable when you suddenly had to worry about Jadeveon Clowney on the other side. And if you didn't, that's when he was going to go off. And then Clowney just kind of faded and wasn't able to sustain that play the way Garrett is. And that really has been the story of his career, that we know he's capable of more than we're seeing. We just don't get it all the time. And that's really been the tale of why he hasn't had that giant extension.
Yeah, that's a really valid point. When you look at the Browns in that line, how important is it for him to get another edge guy opposite Myles Garrett, do you think?
I think it's definitely important. Pass rush is one of those things where one player can make a ton of difference. They can transform a pass rush from not very much into a pretty good unit, but one player can be neutralized. You can dedicate extra resource to take away a guy like Myles Garrett, or make sure that his life is as difficult as possible on every single down. You can dedicate running backs, tight ends, and extra blockers all the time. You can move away from him. If you get a second guy on the opposite side, or if you get a second guy up the middle, just somebody else on that defensive line that offenses have to worry about, that changes the whole dynamic, because it's very difficult to dedicate extra blockers, extra resources to more than one guy. And if they're able to give anybody any kind of compliment to Myles Garrett, I think that makes that defense not just a little bit better, but it's a force multiplier. It magnifies not just the impact of that guy, but it magnifies the impact of what Myles Garrett can do as well, and transforms that defensive line. So, I think if they can get a Jadeveon Clowney back, that I think would be an absolutely no-brainer move, particularly when, a guy like Alex Wright, I think in the draft, was a really intriguing addition and could potentially add something as well. That they need, one or two of those guys to really hit and provide something opposite Garrett.
Talking with Sam Monson, Pro Football Focus. You also graded and ranked the guards in tiers as well. So let's take a look at that. Tier 1, elite. And you got Martin, Nelson, Bitonio of the Browns. And Bitonio's been doing that and kicked over to left tackle for a little bit last year. Just consistent. Tier 2, road graders, but not elite in pass protection. And you got Wyatt Teller right there. How good are the Browns guard tandems, and especially Joe Bitonio? He might be underappreciated by folks around the NFL. Browns fans know because he's just so consistent.
Yeah, I think he probably is. Part of that is because, even when people look for guard play now, they still want to see that old school dominant road grader, the guy that's just going to take a defensive tackle and drive him off the line of scrimmage. And that's why all the attention is going to go towards guys like Quentin Nelson and Zach Martin. They've got that kind of old school throwback of just dominance in the run game. But Bitonio, he's just really good at everything. I mean, pass protection has been the strength of his throughout his career. He's got, I think, 6 straight seasons now with a PFF pass blocking grade above 80. And last season, he really dominated in the run game as well. And at that point, he becomes a complete guard and a guy that is as good as any of those other guys, right up there with Quentin Nelson and Zach Martin. And you don't always need, the absurd physical tools to dominate guys. You just need to make sure you're in the way. You're making sure the defensive player, the defensive lineman usually is not able to get in front of you to exploit the space in your gap and stuff the run. And Bitonio's been really good at that the last couple of years.
Let's shift our focus just a little bit to tackles. Jedrick Wills was banged up early and tried to play through a high ankle sprain and just didn't have the kind of year that you would expect from a guy that was drafted high the previous year. Is there a reason for concern with him, or can you explain a lot of what happened based on just not being healthy?
Yeah, I think that definitely goes into it. It's probably not reason for concern yet, but it does mean that this year becomes almost a make or break season for Jedrick Wills, right? And he needs to kick on and show that he can be that elite level left tackle. And he's also under a little bit of pressure because that was a pretty strong draft class for tackles, the one that he was in. And you had guys like, obviously, Tristan Wirfs comes in as a dominant right tackle from day one. Andrew Thomas with the Giants took him a little bit of time to get going. That rookie season wasn't great, but year 2, we saw him kick on, and injury robbed him a little bit of that season. But when he was on the field, he made a huge difference to the Giants. Mekhi Becton for the Jets looked like he hit the ground running, and then injuries have been an issue for him as well. But that was a very strong draft class of tackles, and Jedrick Wills needs to show that if he gets healthy, and particularly with really good guard play inside of him, it's not like the players around him or any reason that he wouldn't be playing at an elite level, that he can be one of those high-level young tackles.
Sam Monson from Pro Football Focus and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll look at some power rankings in terms of playoff potential for the NFL. Also, grading the 2021 draft. Sports4CLE. Be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Sam Monson from Pro Football Focus. Let's take a listen. Mike Florio was on the Rich Eisen show talking about the situation at quarterback for the Browns if, in fact, Deshaun Watson is suspended.
Mayfield and or people close to him believe that they left him in the game Week 17 at Pittsburgh, prime time, when he was struggling to make him look bad, to make it easier to pivot over to Deshaun Watson or someone else. If he believes that, if he truly believes that they pulled that maneuver, I don't know how you come back from that. And if the Browns are thinking, we may need this guy all year, we don't know, maybe we need him, you better be kissing his butt now to get him back on board with the idea that there could be a mutual benefit to be served here. Hey, Baker, Seattle, Carolina, Cleveland. Where's your best chance to have the kind of year that sets you up for a big contract in 2023? It's Cleveland. So let's find a way to work together, and we'll give you your freedom after this season, and you can go and you can cash in.
A lot to digest there, Sam, when you hear that. Let me ask you this. Who do you think gives the Browns a better chance to win if Deshaun Watson is suspended for a significant amount of time? Baker Mayfield, irrespective of what it would mean locker room-wise, or Jacoby Brissett, just as a quarterback?
Oh, unquestionably, Baker Mayfield is a dramatically better quarterback than Jacoby Brissett. But that's the big key, is that you said, independent of the locker room stuff. And that's really the crux of the thing with Baker Mayfield right now, is that the Browns decided that it was worth going to a guy like Deshaun Watson for the potential upgrade he brings on the field. But doing that pretty much burned all bridges with a guy like Baker Mayfield, who, whatever you think about whether that attitude is useful or not useful, or an issue or not when you're winning or losing games, it's part of Baker Mayfield's personality. That guy holds grudges. That guy remembers what people said years ago. He will use it as fuel, all these kinds of things. And now you just made his bad list. You just made the list of people that he doesn't like because he feels like the Browns organization screwed him. He feels like he came in, gave it everything he had, played all season hurt, trying to do the best for the team, and they pulled the rug out from under him, and they went with Deshaun Watson. And if the Browns need him to come back, if they need him to say, sorry about that, Baker, but we actually need you to stay on the team because the guy we traded for might be missing for a few games suspended, might be missing for half a year, might be missing for the whole year. Can you, put all that aside and do us a solid here and continue to do your job? It feels like that's going to be a pretty difficult thing for him to just put aside and for everything to be good within that locker room. So I agree with Mike Florio that if that's a realistic concern for the Browns, they need to be doing everything possible to try and smooth over whatever relations remain between them and Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, that's certainly something that we will have to keep an eye on as this Deshaun Watson story continues to develop. All right, this is betting market implied power rankings from Pro Football Focus. Super Bowl contenders tier, we've got the Bills, the Chiefs, the Rams, the Bucks, and the Chargers. If things break right tier, Green Bay, Cincinnati, Denver, the Ravens, and the 49ers. Playoff tier, Browns, the Raiders, Colts, and New England. When you look at that, is that a fair assessment of the Browns? Is that taking into account the thought that, Deshaun Watson probably isn't going to be there for all 17 games?
I think it does. Whether it's the thought that Deshaun Watson will be suspended or simply the uncertainty of not knowing whether he will or not, that's what that feels like to me. Because I think if you knew that you were going to get Deshaun Watson for, a full season this year, I think the Browns would be in the next tier up. When you look at the roster, just top to bottom, where this team has strengths and weaknesses, I think they're every bit as good as that next tier of, if things break right, they are a Super Bowl team. They might not be the very best teams in the NFL. They might not have a roster quite as good as Buffalo. And even if they did, there is unknown bringing in a quarterback like Deshaun Watson. Just a quarterback like that changing teams, it's never a sure thing the way it should be with Josh Allen staying in Buffalo and the kind of continuity of coaching that they've had there. I know Brian Daboll left, but in terms of who they've replaced him with and the systems. Cleveland, I think, has a Super Bowl caliber roster. The big question mark is, are they going to get 17 games of Deshaun Watson? Are they going to be dealing with some kind of suspension? And if that happens, what is the Baker Mayfield relationship going to be like?
Sam Monson from Pro Football Focus. Sam, as always, thanks for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much.
Sure, anytime. Thanks for having me.
All right, Sam Monson. Make sure you read him, Pro Football Focus. You can also follow him on Twitter as well. Really good stuff from Pro Football Focus and Sam Monson. That'll do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow, 4 o'clock. Scheduled guests, Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan, Mark Munch Bishop, also scheduled tomorrow. That's 4 o'clock, Sports for CLE. We will see you then. Have a great night, everybody.